All right, folks. Hey, welcome on back for another fantastic edition of our Traders Talk Workshop. Back on our normal Monday schedule, at least here Monday, August 25th. Great to see Chuck, Margaret, Grant, got Nabil, Roberto, all of us just joining us here inside our live trading room. Great to have all of our students and members alike there. And, hey, if you're on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, etc., let me pop this up here on the lower left if I can get this here. I'm on a different setup here. Once again, I'm up in New York myself doing some dog sitting. Little producer's note if you happen to hear a chaotic dog barking in the background here this afternoon. Well, that's Maverick, so I may have to shut him up a little bit quickly, but otherwise down below, lower left at Cyber Trading U. That said, no webcam here for this one. I'll be back in my Florida setup, my normal home office space with all my good monitors, my webcam there. You get to see my ugly mug at least next week. But down below at Cyber Trading U, if you're new to our channel or platform alike, just hit the like or follow and subscribe buttons down there just to situate yourself. You know when we're going live, when we're not, etc. Now with that, scratchy throat, but we've had a great day all together thus far. Chuck just before was asking, hey, on THAR, is that, the Moby Dick stock? Because, this is not our first rodeo, I'll say, at least, Chuck, not Moby Dick, but first rodeo with the stock back from the end of last week, just continued to push up even into today. You could have called this a bit of a pennant building, kind of the highs and lows squeezing in until it broke above Friday's high and really just kept going. Real quick, if you are inside the trading room right now, Uday, Phil, Roberto, etc., I just want to know who was with me in the phase 2 course earlier this morning. Who was with us in our historical charting class? You got Phil, he was there with me, Uday, Margaret, Lee, Wiz, Scott, Kathleen, Roberto. Excellent. So we talked about our historical levels here on the stock, on this trade. We had to go all the way back to like 2023, 2024, the beginning of. And, we had some great prices to watch, right around $5. And even coming up right around here, if I'm not mistaken, it was a pretty good area. I think it was around the 850s that we had said, right around $8.50 back on the end of 2023 here, at least. A couple of weekly candles that wicked up towards there. So let's even check in on this trade live right now, right? Why not? Pick up right where we left off to a small degree. But at least now, as we finished up our class at 11:30 in the morning, well, it came right back up to resistance. And what did we learn from our class just earlier? As we we talk about this even here in Traders Talk, but it's all about the frequency of level tests. So perhaps there could have been something here. But once again, folks, we mentioned this also in this weekly workshop every Monday normally. So feel free to join us inside our live trading room or simulcast on YouTube for this as well. But, hey, Grant, Albert, Roberto, Wayne, I see here, Genevieve, Leda, Manny, I see here. When a stock breaks through a big level, and if it's such a big level, it's, there's so much buying behind it, so big and powerful. Well, simply put, then what should we be getting shortly after it breaks over this? Not only should it flip it into support, but you should be looking for that proverbial big move. Look for the higher high, right? I mean, if it's really that bullish, you're going to get what you want. If it's not going to be as bullish, then it needs to hold over this as support at the bare min. Now, the stock's up 72% today. So is it possible it could be up 172% today? Yeah, technically. I mean, hey, we see stocks up 500%, 700% in one sitting. But let's go back on the long-term chart. Like we just said, this is not our first rodeo with the stock. So this stock at PAFA was back when it was $1.43. I mean, shit, this thing was probably even lower because it made a move in the pre-market one morning here on the 20th. So I'm just going to assume it was probably at $1.20 when we first called it out. And today, at least, it topped off as high as 908. I'm breaking out the old calculator here. Just give me a moment. 908 minus $1.20 divided by $1.20. That's a 656% gain in about 4 days' time. So this stock has already seen such an extended move up, you could say, that eventually, this is going to top off. Every roller coaster has a top, not just for today, but long term, right? And the long term part, we don't really have as good of a grip on when that will be, right? Remember, in the game of musical chairs, I mean, this will be kind of new here, I guess, off the tip of the tongue, so I hope it rolls off well. In the game of musical chairs, right, you know the objective and you know where you're trying to sit. in a chair, right? You see the chairs, you can try and send one, right? You don't know when that music's going to stop, don't you? Well, here we know where our levels are. And is it possible the stock can make a move up as high as 850 here over time? Yeah, it's possible. Now, if we see higher lows and we get a higher high, I'll feel a lot more confident about that. So even here, once it rebroke resistance, it flipped over the opening halt print as we called it out at the time, right at 644. Reflipped resistance into support further, basically at 7, held back over here. So yes, there is a chance that we can get this move again, but just remember where this started, where this came from. It's not like you just started playing the game of musical chairs here. The music's been playing for a little while on this thing, hasn't it? So you know that eventually it's going to stop. So it's just that you don't know when. So as long as, hey, if this could flip into support, great. If it can't flip this into support, it's definitely not a surprise to me, right? So just keep that in mind. That's basically my MO for any stock that makes an extended move like this over time. Same thing is going to be said with open. Same exact thing is going to be said with open here, guys. I mean, the only difference is open has a much larger gas tank. It has a much larger float. So that simply means that it trades more volume day by day. It just has a perfect penny spread. I don't see this opening up anytime soon. This is a different type of stock than THAR, but the same rules apply. This thing went from 2 to 5 in the last 2.5 weeks. Pretty damn impressive, right? Not every stock makes that move. So when is it going to top off? Well, we talked about our historical levels that we had, even dating back to right here, August and July of 23, 2 years ago. So this data is still very much relevant. Looked up here back in September of 22 even. That's when this really started. And this area has been been acting as resistance for a long while now. Hey, listen, if this thing wants to hold over it, then fair play. So that's just where I tell you, at least, I mean, on any of these stocks, doesn't matter which one, there needs to be a reason for us to buy it. It's not just like, oh, Fausto called it out. Oh, Josh called it out. You have to understand yourself why we're calling it out. And the more that you do, you're going to be fluid enough to do it yourself. And hey, you're going to follow our watch list and whatnot, but it's on your own decision. So it's for you to say, hey, where is the stock's best levels? Looking back long term, obviously, we just did our class earlier today going over the historical chart. All right, well, what about Bookmap? Obviously, factor in the icebergs. Right at $6, you got resistance up top here. There's a chance it could top off there for today. Or what if it breaks over that? What if it breaks over 6? I bet you Fausto would be pretty happy for that. I'm going to see if he jumps back in on his trade or not. He did really well on it earlier. And, listen, the more it goes up, he's going to try and jump back in and look for the next leg. So, what if the stars could align and this breaks above 6? Well, your next larger resistance may not be until really 7. Probably have some smaller orders in between, but really 7, then 8, you could say. I wouldn't really shoot too much for the stars on 8 yet because I'm sure there's likely going to be some volume at the whole number level. But point being, you need to know where your levels are first. If you don't know where your levels are, then take a step back and find them. Because if you don't, then you're going to just jump in. There's much higher risk, right? You're just kind of, rolling the dice. You're at the slot machine, just kind of working the machine, hand by hand. You're at the blackjack table. It's just way risk on. There's enough risk to already have with trading, especially on the smaller cap stocks like the THAR. So that's where I tell you, I don't mind missing moves, folks. I don't mind missing stocks if they go up and down without me. Today's not the first day that the stock market's been open. It won't be the last day, right? Real quick, let me ask our students here right now, just all of our members inside our live trading room, how long have you been trading for? Everyone, just everyone here, all together, not even with CTU. How long have you been trading the stock market for, an investor otherwise, or just a trader? Either way. Going to get a mixed bag of answers. So I know that asking here. So, there's going to be some of us that are relatively new still, right? 3 years, 5 years, maybe you could say 10. Phil 40, Tim 25, Bob 10, 20, Brett 25, Barbara 25, Lee decades. A lot of us around that 20-25 area, right? And a few of us, a little bit less, 5 years, 6 months, right? Not everyone comes into the market at the same age at the same time, right? But for Everyone here that answered at least above, 5 years, let alone 20, you know that this is not the last day that the market's going to be open. So if you miss a move, it's not the end of the world. You don't really, you can't really cry over spilt milk too bad there. There's going to be other trades. We had no idea that THAR would be popping the way that it did here back when it was like 9:30 in the morning. I think we called out the first halt on this stock right away at 9:32. It reopened up 5 minutes later and it just crashed. So we just moved on to the next trade. If the stock isn't going to hold over support well enough or continue in that trend at that time, then there's other trades. It's all right. So we honestly just kind of threw this to the side up until 10:14 in the morning. So we really had no idea that this would be making the move that it would be making. And even when it pops here, that's what you hope to see, but it has to play out. Let it play nice here for you, even if it gets halted again going up and flips that into support. So just to mention that there's always going to be new opportunity. And that's where I mentioned real briefly, folks, just if you're joining us in our classes, the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 class, especially for a 36+ year pro like Fausto, listen, if you don't like my voice, if you don't like me, no sweat. Most people don't. But no, I'd say, give great respect to Fausto and him and his class. And of course, me too. I'm self-deprecating in my humor. But just to say, hey, in our classes, focus on what we're showing you, because the more that you're focused on your trading, you're not going to be able to pick up on what we're teaching. And then you're going to ask questions down the line that you should know the answer to. And it's going to cost you on your future trades. So just kind of wrap back at least a class before, folks. Hey, just join us in class, but otherwise have your full focus there. And then the same to be said for trading. Listen, if there's going to be a stock that you're focused on, don't be making breakfast in the morning as you're risking 1,000 shares on a $7 stock. Don't be stepping away to use the restroom. If you really need to, set your stop and make sure that that's taken care of, obviously. But otherwise, you got to have your full focus on your trades. And again, if you're going to miss one or two, that's all right. There's always going to be another. If you missed out on the THAR because you were in class with me this morning, hey, guess what? There was actually another pop on this trade right after we had finished up. So you could have actually jumped in from $8, gotten out around here, gotten at least a small piece of the pie, right? And again, coming up like tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, etc. Even myself, if you ask me like, all right, Josh, what did you trade today? Very minimal, not much today at all. Actually, I took a break-even trade on one of the stocks from earlier this morning, and that was pretty much it. I'm focused on Hertz as a swing. I'm in on that. I'm down like a few pennies on that. That was from the end of last week, but I'm in teacher mode. I'm also in New York myself. So the reason I speak selfishly as Josh the trader is because, well, as much experience as I have, or as much experience as Farzad or Kevin or Nabil or John or Kathleen have, or Grant, we're all the same species. We're all human beings. So listen, if I'm, in New York, I'm working on a semi-decent laptop and I got a side screen here and it's just not my norm. If I'm taking care of my sister's dog, Maverick, who's a bit chaotic at times and needs some, much needed attention, I got to do that. I can't be in everything at once. So it comes with just being a good trader. The best traders accept that, A, they're going to take losses here and there, but otherwise, there's going to be opportunities that they're not going to be able to capitalize on, right? That for one reason or another, even if they are at their screen, they are watching the stock and it is popping, but they're just a little too slow on the draw. Hey, that happens. I mean, hey, for THAR to keep going up, 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 it's much higher risk. So, if you missed out on the last push here, no sweat. It's a pretty, high risk trade. There's going to be lower risk trades that are easier to capitalize on, I'm sure, coming up. If we look at open here, like look at this thing. Again, resistance at 6. You have a little chart level here around 580 from earlier, 577, 580. I know it topped off at least here before, but just the more it's kind of eating away at this area, then why not think that there's a chance that, listen, as long as it stays over 577, 580, that it could make a move up to that iceberg at 6. There's always a new trade that you could try and focus in on. Now, the difference between that being a gambler casino type of statement versus being a statement that's more based on, probability and strategy is, listen, are you focused on trend? Are you focused on where those big levels are, whether it be from Bookmap or just the simple chart? Because if so, then you're following all the right things that you should be doing. real quick for all of us here inside our live trading room, at least, if you jump in a trade, this trade, any trade, what's the immediate thing that you should be doing, thinking of right away once you press buy and you're in the trade? When you're in your driveway and you're about to start your car in the morning, certainly not as you're 75 miles per down the LIE, you better be setting your seatbelt, right? You better be setting your stop order. So as long as you do that, yeah, that's fine. And if you take a loss, then it is what it is. But if there was good reason to take the trade to start, and if you're setting your stop, then it's okay. So there needs to be acceptance, at least, with saying, well, yeah, there's some trades that you take that may be higher risk, even if you have a good level, because it might just be the right place at the wrong time. And maybe at 3:30 in the afternoon, it makes that better algo-driven based move, more volume kicking in. And who knows? Just kind of spitballing that out there. But just otherwise, hey, even from before, there could have been a trade on open from 10:45 in the morning or at 11:18 in the morning if you weren't joining us in class. If you missed out on the morning move from open when Fausto was first in it, calling it out and whatnot, and broke out from this beautiful Fausto flag pretty much right here. Well, listen, if you missed out on it right there, there could have been even better opportunity, perhaps even at this point. It's just all a matter of finding your levels. Let's even do that on the open trade briefly here, if you don't mind, because, well, the writing is kind of on the wall here, isn't it? I mean it. It's literally on the heat map. So real quick, for Grant, Barbara, Roberto, Albert, Uday, our members here inside our live trading room, where do we have resistance when I'm showing you this page here? When I'm showing you the heat map, what sticks out as an orange red line going across the page? 550, right? And that's a 402,000 share seller. So you know that's pretty damn big. Now, of course, it's easy to say this part in hindsight coming up. Give me a quick second here. There we go. So this is going to be easy to say in hindsight, but it blows right over it. Comes up to it, blows right over it though, right? And it goes up 30 cents. That's a pretty respectable move. It's respectable, right? So if there's so much buying pressure off of that 550 and it's going to break above that resistance and run from it, then why not think that at first, if this breaks under and over and builds higher lows, at least, even if it's a little choppy, it built higher lows. Well, listen, it flipped that resistance really nicely into support. So don't get me wrong. If you ever miss out on a trade, the more that you beat yourself up over it, not only, are you wasting kind of time there as far as the next trade, but otherwise, there could always be a new opportunity, even on the same stock. Just give it a little bit of time. You might be there right place, just a little early. Now, if you're there at the right place just late, then you better make sure your stop is set, because otherwise that might be the complete end of the move altogether. Much like the THAR, if it's not going to look to try and come back up there and it's already making a lower high, it's already up 655 freaking percent from last week, that's more prone to pull back. That stock is more likely, higher risk for that to crash. Oh, I got a bunch of us on the YouTubes here today. Oh, great to see. Well, you don't get to see my pretty face here today, Bill and Leda, and Gene. Great to have a lot of our students even simulcasting on the YouTube right now. Appreciate that. That's nice. Answering just earlier there as far as some levels, and Bill, you saying set your limit, your exit. Absolutely there, Bill. Absolutely. All right, folks, let's see. Let me just make sure I'm all squared away here. And our students inside our trading room, Chuck, Wiz, Grant, and Nabil answering all just before as well. Let me go back to something briefly, in fact, because we're going to come back to these trades, obviously, open and the THAR. We'll do like a quick brush up on them before we finish up this workshop. But I want to jump back on a trade that we'll say a student had asked me about that they were in from last week. And I told you I was going to remain that, trade anonymous, and I did. And I've been working with this student in coaching privately, and we've been discussing it separately. Just to go back on it, because for everyone here, it's good to kind of understand swing levels, what to look for. We don't predict the weather outside, but we could just try and manage what we put on as we step outside the door. That sounds kind of silly, but what do I mean by that? Well, it's a matter of planning ahead of time, right? So if you know where your support is, And we did Traders Talk back on, I think it was on Tuesday of last week, right? The 19th, or was it on Wednesday perhaps, right? I think it was on Wednesday the 20th. So on Wednesday the 20th, we did our workshop. So at that point, we were kind of discussing, we already had good support here. So as long as it contains over it, there is still at least a shot for this stock to try and come up. So my student right now is in from a little bit higher of a price, around 449, 450. But now for this move, though, this is going to be very important coming up, because let's look at our levels. Let's look at our resistance here. Been holding pretty nicely, right? Right around 321, 320-ish. This is 327, the wick here at August 1st. 316, the high here on August 5th. 316 again, so that's 2 times. That's 322. What's the low on this candle here? 315. Okay, so let me actually lower this just by a couple pennies. I'll make this like $3.16, which leads me to say, at least right now, even for this stock, and my student here at the time who's managing the trade and it's come back up, I messaged them immediately this morning separately on the side. They know who they are. I wrote them immediately. I said, hey, the stock's moving on up here. Give me a sec. But just to say, though, now it's the point of saying, if this can hold over 316-ish, give or take a couple pennies up and down, then there could be a lot more room for this to keep going. This is one of those EVTOL, like air taxi, drone stocks, LIDR, as in the LiDAR technology. I think that's the thing that Waymo uses, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, just to mention, not all of these stocks are moving together. Joby, Joby, this thing was probably the best mover going back into the summer. And this is down like 4% right now. What the hell's going on here with Joby? Archer's down 1.8%, not doing that great today, at least. But this LIDR, whatever the news is, perhaps led to a pretty nice run. Give me a brief moment here. I'll even try and check the news here if I can. See if I can drag Benzinga Pro into this here briefly. I'm on a different setup here, so I'm like squeezing screens into screens. I'm actually tapped in remotely into my Florida computer, but through a tiny screen. So let's go right over to LIDR. Just see, did we have news? Was there even news out on this thing? Or is this just some sort of good momentum? Oh, hello. We got something from today for my student here that's in this trade. And maybe for other students, who knows? This is up a little bit today coming off news. There's at least a catalyst as to why this is up right now. But LIDR and Blue Band, whatever company, announced a strategic partnership to accelerate smart city infrastructure with AI-driven LiDAR solutions. I will not be reading all of this. I've had enough coffee and not enough water this morning. But otherwise, at least some news that came out building on their 2025 July launch of Optis. It's on Benzinga Pro. You could read it for yourself there otherwise there. But, hey, at least there's a headline. There's a catalyst. It's moving. There's a good spread. You got an iceberg here a little bit at 325. So speaking of knowing your levels, all right, well, we have a nice historical level to look at there. Let's go and actually check out Bookmap and see where the full heat map, what the full heat map shows. This one's a little bit messier to read. It's not terrible. You zoom in here, see if we can get some grip on this. Okay, so it looks like 310 was your largest level here. $3.10. Big volume spike from earlier today. Definitely a lot more than what's even here at 318, 319, etc. 310. There was an iceberg there earlier today too. Darker red line. Chip away through it. It moved off of it a bit. So worst case scenario, if this pulls back even here, what I would want to see would be to see this 310, 309. What kind of target here? It's kind of the delta there too, 309, 310. Look for that to try and be support as well. So the historical level may not hold perfectly. It may not be so instant, right? It was already chipping through it a bit. Maybe it does now. Who knows? Maybe higher lows from this point. It holds better now off the historical. But I'll just come back to this at least later on as I do the afternoon meeting. That purple line's the historical level. This white line here is going to be the bookmap CVP level. All right. From Roberto asking, what's the difference in bookmap in the columns, CVP, SVP? My man, appreciate you asking me right now. Thank you. Yes. So Roberto had asked that earlier. I politely asked if he could just save that for Traders Talk. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. The difference between SVP, CVP, SVP. Let me just jump to an example that has the SVP. Most of the time I use CVP. Most of the time I use CVP. And why I use SVP, I can't really give you a verbal reason why that includes words of the English language, because it's really just based on gut feel. It's kind of just based on like what I want to look at that point in the day. I'll explain why. I'll show you the difference between both, and it's up to you if you want to use one or the other. Really, I personally use CVP myself because what CVP does is that it shows basically the volume profile across this picture. Now, notice how I phrased that. When I zoom in on this picture, well, the volume profile changes because it's only going to factor in the time involved from like here, the left side of my heat map, to the right side. So within this picture, right? Now, of course, the more that I kind of scale back, and if I kind of reset my screen here, then it's going to factor in more data, right? I could even use this to go back on pre-market. If there's a stock I had up, at least from yesterday or from Friday's trading, I could factor that in too here, perhaps with this CVP. But just pointing out, the reason I like this is because I could zoom in and out, and it changes. So I could focus in on smaller time frames if I want. I could focus in on larger time frames if I want. With the SVP shows simply from this session. Doesn't matter if you zoom in. So if I zoom in, notice these bars do not change. They may change just in relation to the picture, I guess, but barely, right? You could just see that nothing is really changing in the size of those bars, right? As I zoom in on the picture. So at least SVP, it shows the volume profile, but it's locked in on the session. S means session. So, C means chart, S means session. That's all. Nabil asking, is Thinkorswim Bookmap, does that have the CVP? It absolutely does, yes. So I'll just show this to you real briefly. Great question. So with that, if you have Bookmap on Thinkorswim, it may load it up like just in different columns at first. I don't know what the 100% default load up is on Thinkorswim Bookmap. It might give you some different columns each time, like at first. So let's just say for reference, Nabil, let's say if you have the COB column here, what you do is you right click just on like the numbers here, right? Under where it says COB, like on the numbers, you're going to right click. Now for you on Thinkorswim, you're going to see a little bit different of a lineup here. There's probably going to be some Thinkorswim settings at first. And then you're going to see where it says heat map components, I believe, or it might say configure column, right? And if there's something that does say insert column, that's what you're going to want to do. So you actually need to click insert column first. It actually like copies and pastes a new COB column for you, technically, but you don't want to lose this. So you don't want to just convert this. You lose the COB then. So you got to insert the column first. It adds one. Now you right click the new one that you made, change it to volume. You might need to go to where it says heat map components first. That might be the choice you need to click first to get this. But otherwise, click where it says volume afterwards. So this will change. And you could change it between chart range accumulated, the CVP, or you could do the session one, SVP. I personally go with CVP more often than not, most of the time, etc. Let me even go back here, change this. Because if I'm using the volume profile right now on like THAR, at least here, what I want to focus on is the recent charting here, because it already built good support around 750s, 760s and moved up. It's already building good support here. We want to see higher lows, right? So I'm not like that interested in what happened at 9:30 in the morning. It's already way higher from where that was trading at then. So like at least here as CVP, I'm focused on a small time frame here right now. And it's just easier for me to say. That's all. But if anyone prefers SVP, they choose that. No harm, no foul. As long as you're reading it the right way, that's all that matters. All right. So again, a couple stocks that we're going to keep our eyes on now. I mean, a few really. The LIDR, absolutely. We are focused on, not even for myself and my student here at the time that I'm working with on this trade, but all of us, because this is 100% tradable. Great spread, filled in order book. Otherwise, it's not up a ton today, but it's up enough where it's on the gainers list. People are looking at it. There's news. I mean, how can we not focus on this thing? Now, otherwise, the THAR is technically still in play. I mean, if this wants to really blast back up over this historical area, let it prove me wrong. I love that. You know, that's what I always say. Let it prove itself to us. Let it prove me wrong here. I don't know if it's going to go all the way up higher. It's already moved up 655% over the last week. I think that could be enough, right? So in the case that it's not enough, then I would love to see it prove me wrong. Now, otherwise, though, the other stock that would be better, like the LIDR, is nice based on the liquidity. And then here, again, you see what just happened. Unfortunately, this did not hold over where it needed to. If anyone was looking for a move now up to 6, then it needed to flip this area really well into support. And if it's not going to, very similar to what like we always teach, if it's not going to make a good reaction off of that level, a big move up, well, it's going to make a big move. I guarantee that part of it. It's just going to make a big move the other way. So, you know, that's where even here, if someone like was jumpy to take the trade, all right, it's building up well, and you had a resistance at 6. So if there was a chance for it to at least go up to there, not a bad profit to think about. But if it's not even going to attempt to flip this area into the support it needed to, then just get out. That's all. Save yourself a lot of hassle. Now, as we're going to finish up this workshop here in probably the next 5 or so minutes, folks, if there's any emails that came in, I'll try and field those briefly. This was going to be a bit of a more abridged traders talk for this week. We'll go back to our normal schedule, or I should say we already have. We're back on our normal schedule now at this point. Every Monday afternoon I'm on here, but I'll be back in my home office next week. We'll get the full hour at least in there next week. But, you know, on this open stock, there was a bit of a ladder here on the bid, wasn't there? Right here. And it was just laddering up and up and up and up and up and up and up for a little while, right? This order down below at 540, they moved up to 550. Then they moved up over time to 560, 61, 63, 64. Do I have 65? I think that you know the answer to that question. Yes, right there, that red line. So it looks like it actually hit it. Question is that are we going to see this continue to support this price here now? Because it technically broke into it, but it didn't crash. It came right back up and over this price here. So what if this continues to hold from 565, and if it doesn't break any lower? Then you know what? I think that there could be more support to see get built, and then maybe we get a better move later on today, right? That was at 565. Even just make this line here briefly. If it breaks below this area, then definitely watch out. You know, I would probably even then say, you know, the VWAP price could be good support down below at 530. So you know, that would just be what I would focus on coming up. All right, folks, give me a brief moment. I'm going to try and go through emails before I finish, if there are any. I didn't have the chance to even check my inbox earlier today. I had that message that came in earlier. Oh, actually, you know what? I didn't get back to one of our students on this. And actually, I'll say, Albert, you sent me over an email even from Thursday. Again, I've been just a bit of a mishmash here up in New York, doing a few things there. So I apologize. But, you know, I'm catching your email right now. And let's actually go into it. Albert was asking about Netflix. And he says that it developed into an interesting pattern of recent. He wanted to get my input before he jumped into a swing trade. Hopefully not too late there, Albert. I apologize for fielding this a bit late. Feels like a setup, or it feels like it's setting up a Fausto flag this week since Tuesday's drop with the market. Now, That is a great point because I actually saw this from the end of last week. I remember I looked at your email for a moment, but unfortunately slipped through the cracks. What Albert's looking at here is essentially the lows are building up a little bit, I believe. And it was topping off here for a little while after the drop, right? Now, what I'll mention is you want to focus on Fausto flags that are to the upside, like that one, I guess you could say is, but not after a drop. You want it to be as the stock is going up, 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 up. So at least where it had dropped off to start, there's just simply going to be a point where it needs to build support if it wants to go back up. So if it wants to pop, it's probably going to require a couple of days or even a week for it to even make a move. It's not as often that the stock will do a complete V shape in 1 day sitting. If it happens, right? I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's less probable. Now here, though, I mean, I don't even know if there was a headline that came out that spiked Netflix down. I'm a huge fan of Netflix, not only as like a company. I actually don't subscribe to Netflix, so shouldn't say that all the way through, right? But no, as a company, I love what they've been doing. A lot of good things within their structure of events that they've been doing. They got into the live sports a long while ago, but they've been building on that. They locked in deals with major companies, NFL, I believe, the NBA, I believe, definitely boxing, definitely UFC, definitely wrestling, like the fake professional wrestling, right there, brings in huge money. So that is great. Now the question is, when you have these drops like this, okay, well, if it's going to take days to build support, or if it's going to take time at the least, where did we have support previously? That's what we'll need to answer here on this chart. So what I'll just say is this went up, 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 up. But as it was doing that, notice that there was a couple of rejection points where it took time to build a series of days of support. Here, it moved up and it came down. Well, from the support, it was already building a bit here. It held over it on this wick. And then you had your V-shaped reversal within the day, which is nice. But over time, these are two support lines right here that I appreciate. Now, as it comes down, then you could probably include this as well, probably even further now at this point, maybe even lower this, but then draw the same line here again. This was the original line I had here just before. So more or less, it's just kind of building support here. Now, it popped today, so if you didn't have the chance to jump in maybe even higher, then the question is, where is the next resistance that you could see flip into support? Now, I know we don't necessarily like taking trades from higher price levels because we feel like we might be chasing. We might feel like it's too late. We might feel like I should have gotten in from lower. Yes and no. So if the stock was going to react off of past levels, then I would love to jump in from a great support. If we're looking at here, then yes, I guess it built into this here over a series of days. So that could have been possible. But if it's going to try and make the next better move up, that's where I'd rather look at the long-term graph and just see. So let me go back to that daily chart there. I shouldn't have done that. Okay, so move these lines around and delete them here because now we'll focus on a little resistance. It's not big, it's little, because at least this kept going up over time, right? But at first, going back into the beginning of June, we had this reaction. So it topped off here for a moment. Now, let's just kind of use a couple of these other bars or a couple of these other wicks. And you could potentially say before the all-time high that it had set around 1,300 and change, well, if it really wants to make that all-time high and push and break up to 1,500 even over time, 2,000 maybe even over time, then you really want to see it flip this local resistance into a local support. And if you want to even use the high from last week, this into that, like kind of a web here, let it break over it, maybe even go up as high as up to 1,300, and then reject off of that into this, let it hold, boom, that's your next move. So there's a couple of ways that you could play it, but listen, if you're not going to get it off support on pullbacks, if you did, great. If Albert already, followed his own intuition and, didn't wait for my response, I appreciate Albert waiting. At least I was a little late to the draw. But, if you got in, Albert, off this, area, great. If you were looking for a lower dip, then I understand. And, otherwise, that's where I'll tell you, I would rather not buy in between two big levels from the historical chart, unless if there's great reason to, if there's incredible reason to. So what does that even mean? Well, that's where you could try and use Bookmap, but it's going to be tougher on Netflix. It's so expensive. This doesn't really have great order size at all. So maybe on a day, by stroke of good luck, if you see some massive like 37, 45,000 share seller or buyer, then that could create some extraordinary support. Here is about 5,000 shares. Like if that's the typical size for an iceberg on Netflix, then I need something larger than that to get me in. So it might just be a case where you got to wait it out a little bit longer. You were gonna buy the options and not the stock. All right. Well, now at this point, we'll just wait it out further. It's okay. I'm very bullish on Netflix. So, listen, if this is gonna go up to 1,500, then I have no problem. If we don't get in from the support, then wait to see the next support build. That would be the case. Is there a head and shoulders forming? There was, but it basically, it's tough. I wouldn't call it as such yet there, Denzel. I see what you're looking at here because it looks like a bit of a shoulder, a head, but it drooped down a lot first, and now it's building this back up again. So I guess you could say that in the sense that resistance is shown there. So that's what I was telling Albert, like, hey, if this is going to break again as resistance and hold into it as support, that's the next move. If it's not going to do that, then there is a chance that this could look to just trade in this range more or break lower over time. But again, I'm a big fan of Netflix as a company. They've been killing it for a long time. So, I know some students that have been in this trade since their IPO or even coming off of it back in 2015, 2016. Sure wish I jumped in back in 2022. All right, folks. Hey, we're going to wrap up at least for right now. That was pretty much all I got, which is fine by me. But if there's any other questions you have for myself here, feel more than free to let me know. You could always send me a quick, private chat if you're inside our live trading room. You could always email me if you're on social media. I'll post this up here coming up in just a bit. But my email address for all of our students, at least first, josh@ctutrading.com. We do this workshop every Monday afternoon at noon Eastern. But, just definitely email me in advance. Early bird gets the answer, but send it over to my personal email address, josh@ctutrading.com. Again, that's on YouTube right there too. So feel more than free to send over any follow-up questions as well. Gene, Leda, Bill, and all of us just here. A lot of our students simulcasting there. But otherwise, if you're new to our channel, new to our stream, new to our platform, a couple of options for you at least. You can hit the follow and subscribe button down below. Lower left will show our account name there @CyberTradingU. Just hit the follow or subscribe button, the big red obnoxious subscribe button down below if you're on the YouTubes. But otherwise, if you're interested in joining us inside our live trading room, we got about 113 of us here right now. That's really good, actually. I got to commend a lot of our students for showing up today. Granted, today is class day, but just as traders, I see a lot of us here. This is the dog days of summer and the week before Labor Day. It's the week before my birthday. So you figure things are going to be really semi-joke. The world doesn't revolve around me. But yeah, certainly we got Labor Day at least coming up next Monday. That's one of two things we got there. But markets are going to be slow beforehand. And with that, we had a really good morning so far. So there could be new opportunity taking us into the afternoon. If you're on social media, feel more than free to go right down to the link scrolling down below, just on the bottom there, ctu.co/trial. You'll see that popping up in just a moment, I'm certain. But, join us there inside our trading room. We'll come up. We'll continue to have our conversations there inside our chat board. And our next broadcast will at least be here at 2:30 Eastern for the afternoon meeting. All right, folks, I'll talk to you.